Today, we're going to talk about a war that completely changed the world, one that decided who would be a superpower and who wouldn't. But here's the thing, it's probably not the war you're thinking of.
So, when you hear the term World War, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Yeah, for most people, it's World War I or World War II, right? You're picturing trenches, tanks, maybe some old black and white footage.
But what if I told you the actual First World War? A massive, sprawling conflict fought across multiple continents and oceans happened way, way before any of that. Yep, let's get into it.
Okay, so this whole thing didn't kick off with some big formal declaration of war. Not at all. It actually started as a rivalry over two things, land and money. You had the two biggest global players at the time, Great Britain and France, and they were on a total collision course, right in the forests of North America.
Check this out. Both of these massive empires had their eyes on the very same prize, the Ohio River Valley. For the British, it was all about expansion. They just wanted more room for their colonies to grow westward. But for the French, it was about protecting their super profitable fur trading business with their Native American allies. So what do they both do? They start building forts, basically drawing lines in the sand and daring the other side to cross. Things were about to get very, very messy.
So you've got this one little spark in the American wilderness, right? Well, that spark didn't just start a little campfire. It ignited a full-blown global inferno. This regional fight was about to become everybody's problem.
Over in North America, you'll often hear this conflict called the French and Indian War. And that name is really important because it tells you a huge part of the story. The French weren't fighting alone. They had strong alliances with many Native American nations who were, understandably, very worried about the British colonies just constantly pushing west. So this was really just one piece, the American piece, of a much, much bigger global war.
At first, the British Army had a really tough time. Their soldiers in those bright red coats were not ready for fighting in dense forests. They were getting picked apart by French and Native American fighters using guerrilla tactics. That's a style of quick hit-and-run attacks. But then, Britain played its ace in the hole, the Royal Navy. By setting up a naval blockade, they basically put a chokehold on the coast, stopping French ships from bringing in any new soldiers or supplies. That was the game changer, and it led directly to the capture of the crucial cities of Quebec and then Montreal. Meanwhile, all the way back across the Atlantic, in Europe, the war was on a completely different scale. We're talking massive armies, hundreds of thousands of soldiers crashing into each other. Britain's main ally, Prussia, which was led by a military genius named Frederick the Great, was literally in a fight for its very existence, surrounded by the combined power of France, Austria, and Russia. Talk about pressure. But the fighting didn't stop there. On the complete other side of the planet, in India, another front was raging. And this one wasn't just about claiming territory. This was about controlling the incredibly rich trade in things like spices, silk, and tea.
What's really wild is that this was almost like a corporate war. You had two gigantic companies, the British East India Company and the French East India Company, basically duking it out. The decisive moment came at the Battle of Plassey in 1757. A British leader named Robert Clive pulled off a major victory, which gave him control over the super wealthy region of Bengal. This effectively kicked the French out of India and was the beginning of what would become almost 200 years of British rule.
And yes, the war even spread to the Caribbean. Now, these weren't just pretty beaches. These islands were like the oil fields of the 18th century. They were the world's source for sugar, which made them unbelievably valuable. The British captured key French islands like Martinique and Guadeloupe, and even took the huge port of Havana in Cuba, which was a massive financial blow to their enemies. Okay, let's just recap for a second. Britain is fighting a war on 4 different continents at the same time. How on earth did they pull that off? Well, it turns out they had a secret weapon. The key to their victory was total domination of the seas. The British Royal Navy was, without a doubt, the most powerful fleet on the planet. This gave them a gigantic advantage. It was like having a global taxi service for their army, allowing them to project power anywhere in the world. And honestly, that whole idea is a blueprint that superpowers still follow to this day. And their most powerful tactic was something called a naval blockade. Let me break that down. Think of it like this. You use your warships to form a giant wall around your enemy's ports. Nothing gets in, and nothing gets out. No new soldiers, no food, no weapons. It's a way to slowly and surely starve your enemy's overseas armies. And you can just see how effective this was. The French forces in America and India were completely cut off from help. Meanwhile, the British could move their own troops pretty much anywhere they wanted. They could protect their own valuable trade routes while trapping the French Navy in its ports. And crucially, it prevented any possibility of France launching an invasion of Britain itself.
But winning a war this big comes with some equally big consequences. Victory had a huge price tag, and it was about to completely redraw the map of the world.
So take a look at North America before the war. See that huge territory right in the middle? That was all claimed by France. It was a massive arc stretching from Canada all the way down to Louisiana, and it physically blocked the British colonies from expanding west.
And now, look at the map after the war. It's just gone. The Treaty of Paris in 1763 changed everything. France was basically wiped off the continent. Britain took Canada and all the land east of the Mississippi River. Just like that, France's entire American empire simply vanished.
But again, this massive victory came at a staggering cost. To pay for its giant global military, Great Britain went deep, deep into debt. We're talking about a mountain of it. A national debt is basically like a country's credit card bill, and Britain had just about maxed it out. So how did they plan to pay this enormous bill? The government in London decided the American colonists should help foot the bill. Their logic was, hey, we fought this war partly to protect you, so you can help pay for it. So they started introducing new taxes on the colonies, and that did not go over well. The colonists were furious, shouting about taxation without representation. This chain of events, the debt leading to taxes, leading to anger, lit the fuse that would directly lead to the American Revolution just over a decade later. Look, this all happened over 250 years ago. So why is it so important today? Because the effects of this one war are, believe it or not, still all around us. We're living in the world that this war created. I mean, think about it. The reason English is the main language spoken in North America? This war. The reason Britain controlled India for almost 2 centuries? This war. It literally shaped the borders that would one day become the United States and Canada. And it proved a new rule for how to be a superpower. If you control the oceans, you control the world.
So you see, this wasn't just some dusty old war from a textbook. It was a massive turning point that shaped the modern world we live in. Which leaves us with one last big question. How different would everything be today if the other side had won?